All right, welcome to this episode of Better Call Saul. Today we have Saul Klein with us. Hey, Saul.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. The father of technology, right? Realtor technology, invented the
Yeah.
internet. I don't know.
All of the above.
All of the above. And Rachael Real, broker of Rachael Real Estate in Chicago. Hey, guys. So,
Hey, Jen. Hey, Saul.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Rachel.
so today we're going to talk about something a little controversial, which we normally do, but NAR came out with, or for the Code of Ethics, Article 10. Rachel, can you read this article so we can talk about it?
Sure. So Article 10 states, let's see here. Realtors shall not deny equal professional services to any person for reasons of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Realtors shall not be parties to any plan or agreement to discriminate against a person or persons based on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Realtors in their real estate employment practices shall not discriminate against any person or persons based on those things. And then furthermore, we'll kind of talk about Standard of Practice 10-5, which says realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. So that is Article 10 in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think at like face value, I mean, that sounds reasonable.
Right. Why are we even discussing it?
Right.
It's very reasonable.
Yeah, people shouldn't do that. But the problem is like, where does it then end up? Like as a professional, but what about in your personal life? Right, Saul?
Yeah, so there's probably some misunderstanding even about this. So again, we say text without context is pretext.
Right.
And let's look at the context of our Code of Ethics. And that our Code of Ethics is made up first of these articles. And then those articles are further explained in what we refer to as standards of practice.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, the articles change and we get new standards of practice. It's a body, like a body of ethics that grows and changes, and that there's a structure. There's people at the local level, people at the state level, and people at the national level that all look at all these ideas and thoughts that come up about what our code of ethics should be and what it should state. And so as society changes, our code of ethics changes. And so know that the code of ethics is a living, breathing,
right? It's a living document
and process. And so now we have a lot of change in our culture, in our society. Recently, we've had as much change in the last 10 years probably as we've had in the last 50 years.
Right, at least.
And so lots and lots of changes. And so we have, you read Article 10, everything sounds great. And as a matter of fact, now they've added all kinds of new categories of people that fall into, you have to be careful how you treat them.
Right.
And that's okay. Everybody should be heard. Now, what happens in society is that some of these things, because in our own culture, we've got these different conflicts between what's socially acceptable and what's acceptable as a religious belief. We've actually, believe it or not, gotten into that.
Right.
Where on the cultural and social side, we're actually allowed to criticize people's faith. And so that's a big complication when you add the faith piece to this.
Right.
And so I think that's where the controversy is, at least for me.
Well, I think there was an article, and this whole reason why this came up for this conversation is there was an article of a man that is a realtor, and he's also like a pastor or whatever, priest, I don't know what I guess a pastor. And he
A clergy person.
Clergy, yeah.
Whatever.
I'm not very religious, but he outside of his duties as a real estate agent, he was leading his church as he does, and he did not want to participate in what was it, like a food pantry situation where they had participated for many years. And I think the reason in the article, the reason that he cited was because they were having their clergy people pass out flyers to encourage the LGBTQ community to come. And he said, this is not something that we are wanting to do. It's against like our belief system, not to like not help them, but we just don't want
Just
to
didn't want to
out
be responsible for passing
flyers.
out those
And he
flyers
said,
in
we're
those
just
in the meal bags.
exactly. And we're going to just have we're going to do our food pantry elsewhere. And then, but that's the point, right? Like, if your religion states that you're like not want to be a part of it, but you're also a realtor, where does the line cross? Is that considered hate speech?
Well, again, in hate speech from a legal perspective or from a code of ethics perspective,
Right.
Right. It's
which
two very
could be
different
two
things.
different things, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is that if a flyer was put in a bag that somebody felt was promoting something that violated their faith, not their made up faith, but their faith that they were taught all their life, that they believed all their life, and they truly in their heart believe in the fact that modern people today think that things don't work the way they used to. They have the right to say that, but do you have the right to say to somebody that there are other things that come above your faith,
Right.
for which you can be held accountable? And not only that,
Profession.
can your
That's above
profession
that. Right.
set professional standards? Yes, it can. But can it and should it set these other standards? Because there's other ways that this gets policed. If people don't like what this person said, then they don't have to do business with them.
Right.
All right, I mean, so there are other remedies. And should it really be the mission of a handful of people at the local level who all have different amounts of training, different educational levels, different understandings, to come together and to judge
Right.
somebody based on this body of law passed by our trade association? And so one argument is no, that's stepping way beyond your bounds. And the other is no, that's all part of being a human being, and we all have to abide by this. But then the question is, when you start doing this, whose rights then are violated?
Yeah.
Right.
Where does it end? I mean, I don't think that your profession defines you as a person in totality. Like, we are complicated people, and we have a lot of different beliefs and thoughts and things. And I just don't think that, for me, I don't think a professional organization, I think it becomes difficult though, because how you behave at doing your job as a real estate agent and how you behave in life, they mix. It's very difficult to keep it separate.
Yeah, so
there's a reason they say not to discuss religion or politics at a family holiday party, right? I mean, we're just taking this to a really, to the next level.
Yeah. So, you kind of think about this idea is that if you removed religious reasons from it,
yeah,
remove faith from it, then I think it's probably totally legitimate.
You're right.
You make a better argument for it being legitimate.
You hit the nail on the head.
But when
you're talking about faith and
you're talking about faith,
specific,
that's a tough one.
It's really tough.
And so how did our organization think that that should be so powerful to overreach and overstep? And I would like to see, where did this originate, this article?
Do you think this originated after the January 6th situation in Washington?
There's no doubt in my mind it originated as a result of some of the changes in our culture over the last 5 to 10 years, right?
Yes.
Probably accelerated
by January 6th,
right? And accelerated by the fact that so many people today are ignorant and want to virtue signal.
Yeah.
So people are ignorant of the facts, but they want to tell the world why they believe in the facts.
Yes.
To the point where they want to challenge somebody's faith. And that's the rub to me, is challenging somebody's faith. Now, if they made it up and it really wasn't, but if they are sincere about their faith, then I have a hard time with it. Now, in this particular case, I think that we talked about, it all worked out, didn't it? In other words, the system was there. People are kind of told and instructed what you can and cannot do. Somebody complained because they sensed the violation, but the panel held up that the person didn't commit a violation. Is that right?
I think that's what happened. Yeah, but it's still like, where does being a real estate agent begin? Where does it end if you're doing your life and you're not you're out doing your life and you're not behaving and you're not being a real estate agent.
Yeah, but Jennifer, real estate is my life. Right?
But it's not, it's not, I mean, yes, it is part
I
of
think
life. It is
well,
not you.
think about how much ethics plays a role in being a realtor, though. So think about that. You know, I can think of people that, you know, are probably the most unethical people that I probably know by a long shot. Would I entrust them with my real estate business as a consumer? Absolutely not. So I think there's some connection between who you are personally and your personal ethics and how you function as a realtor.
But
However, I think when you're talking about the religious part of it and the faith part of it, it's so difficult because who am I to tell you,
problem.
either one of you, that your faith or your beliefs or what you've been taught for 30, 50, 60 years is wrong.
Religion, it could be anything. And even if, okay, so let's say I said,
well, yeah, but stop a second. But religion is specifically protected.
Right.
Like, that's why I have an issue with it, right? That specifically
right.
is kind of, so people have the right to have the faith that they want in this country.
Right. And I think it's good to have that included in there in terms of the fact that if you're a buyer and you are a different religion than me, I can't discriminate against you. I think that's perfectly acceptable, and that should be part of that. But when you take it and say, now,
if you are their realtor and you're acting on behalf of them, no, you can't.
Right. And I totally 100% agree with that. I think to Saul's point, when you start
religion in your private life.
Absolutely. And I think that's the only sticking point in this particular thing here that has it gives you a little bit of a.
It's where do you draw the line?
Right.
So you know, you get into this discussion around is real estate my life, and is real estate part of everything you do, and do you have the right to believe in other things? And so remember this, that first of all, we've got laws against this kind of behavior, certain types of behavior. Laws.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now we know that a code of ethics, and this is what we always say about being a realtor, is we perform at a higher level, right? We do more than the law requires. And so while there are laws that say you can't do these things, what we're saying is we also have a code of ethics. Right. And a code of ethics places us in a higher, we report to a higher authority. And so we have this code of ethics, and it's more stringent than law. So number one, you've already got these laws. But then here's another thing is, and we chatted a little bit about this, realtors are notorious for comparing themselves to other professions.
Right.
And whether or not it's even a profession or not, that's a question we could take a lot of time talking about. But realtors
we can talk about that all day.
Professional, and that they are a profession. And we see these arguments all the time. Somebody says, hey, I'm looking to give closing gifts. What closing gift? And somebody else says, doctors don't give closing gifts. So why do you give closing? Somebody says, I'm thinking about negotiating somebody says, you shouldn't negotiate. We're professionals, right? So it's like, well, we know that we believe that we're professionals. Right. And so now we've got this new addition to our code of ethics, which personally we can talk about and we can challenge. And what's going to do probably is make people subject to charges that don't stick, because it's too nebulous. I think there will
probably be a lot of that.
But it'll raise the consciousness about this. But I think really important for us to do is to say, look, okay, realtors, let's give you the benefit of the doubt. And let's say you are a professional. You're just like the CPA. Yeah. You're just like the attorney. You're just like the doctor. They all have codes of ethics. What are their codes of ethics say? Does the doctor's code of ethics allow him to be an individual when he's not being a doctor? Right. Does the American Bar Association allow an attorney not to, comply with, if they've got those kinds of things during their private life?
Yeah, that I don't know.
We should look at that, right? That would be an interesting comparison.
Well, and the thing too is like, okay, so let's say in this case or any other case that comes, somebody does get in trouble for something that they said outside of being a realtor. So now everybody knows you're not allowed to say it, you're not allowed to do it, no matter if it's professional or it's your personal, whatever. Just because you don't say it or don't do it doesn't mean you don't think it.
Can't stop you from, at least so far.
Right.
Can't stop you from thinking.
Right. And it doesn't mean, like, what was the other change? The Confederate flag change?
Right. So that you cannot, as agents, you're responsible for what's put out into the MLS and in your marketing, even though it's not your personal home. So if I go to list a property and there's a Confederate flag hanging in the living room or on the front porch, I'm responsible now for making sure that homeowner removes that. because that's no longer permitted.
Yeah. So you know what? We probably agree. So I'm not adverse to those types of restrictions.
Right.
It
Right.
kind of seems to me, though, that might be an overreach on the part of the realtors that design and change and work with the professional standards committees.
It's absolutely an overreach.
And that it's
And
an
where
overreach by the
and-
organization.
Yeah.
And
Are you
why
talking about
would
the
they do
Confederate
it?
flag?
Because
Everything.
and why would we do it? Why would our organization do it? In my mind, it goes back to this virtue signaling thing, right? We're trying to tell the world we're good guys. We're
Yeah.
good guys. Look, we believe in all the same things you do. And while that's okay, is it necessary? Are there other ways to handle it? Is it going to create more problems? And then it can even go further than that. Because what are you going to do? You're going to kick somebody out of being a realtor?
Right.
Well,
They don't even
say you do.
out for fraud. Like,
But
how many people have lost their license? Like, hardly
So
anybody.
let's say, so what are you going to do? You're going to kick them out. You can't take their license away for a code of ethics violation. So they're going to still have a license to practice real estate. You're going to kick them out of the professional organization. And in some states, that means they lose the MLS. But I tell you what, if somebody got kicked out of the organization and lost the MLS, I think you'd see antitrust lawsuits. Right. So there are other ramifications of this. So I get back to, it seemed to me like it was a knee-jerk reaction to something.
Yeah.
Who are the people at NAR? Who are the volunteers? And I know the leadership will stand up and say that but no, really, who drove this change? And I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, but it's going to have repercussions.
Right.
And personally, and here's what then it does. It drives people to keep things inside.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Right. And so now, and I had a friend of mine say this the other day, he said, he teaches his kids, you have to be a sheep. You have to be a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, because if you go to school and you say something that you could get in big trouble, it'll affect you the rest of your life.
Right.
And so I want you to learn the right things. And at the same time, when you go to school, there's certain things you can't say because other people are going to judge you.
Right.
And is that the kind of world we want to live in? Well, that's the kind of world we're moving towards.
We're
right?
creating that.
Do you think that the reasoning behind the Confederate flag, change to the code and to the MLS rules is a result of not wanting to, if you're a particular buyer and you're looking in a neighborhood and you see that on a home, is that going to make you as a buyer feel less welcome in the neighborhood, less like you're going to fit in? And do you think that has something to do with
that's how the neighborhood
that they've done
is, and the flags are all taken down, you buy this most expensive asset that you own, you get in there, you find out everybody wants to have a Confederate flag up. Do you feel more or less safe?
Yeah. So here's a couple of points. Are you responsible for enforcing the ethics of your customers?
No.
Right.
Right.
And if you're going to make them, so I would say, it makes sense.
If we were, we'd have no customers.
Well, it makes sense to me to say,
and no agents.
Somebody's got a Confederate flag up, and I were to go into take a listing, then it would be up to me as a professional to say, you might be alienating a certain portion of the people that would buy. And so it makes sense if you're really trying to sell this property that we don't alienate people. And my recommendation is, I'm not saying you're wrong in having that flag. I'm saying that it's probably not going to help in the sale of your property.
Does it end?
Well, and if you take that to the next step, if you have a culture of people that has a prayer room in their home,
right,
and it's got lots of statues and photos and all kinds of things, and I've been in those homes too.
Yeah.
Do you say that you've got to take your prayer room out now?
Yeah, you can make the recommendation. I think a professional would then say, you know what, based on the market we're in, people are going to hate it if you put that up there. And since you're trying to sell your house, let's be sensible about this.
Right.
That would be one approach. The other approach is to say, I'm not going to list your house because you won't do that. And I don't know that that's within obviously it is, NAR passed it, but will that drive people out of wanting to be a realtor? Because remember, in a lot of states now, you don't have to be a realtor to join the MLS. And if the realtor organization says our rules are more important than your faith, I'd say forget it. I don't want your rules.
Yeah.
Well, and if these lawsuits happen because of the tying and the fact that now if you become a non-member of NAR and you lose access to the MLS, if that becomes an issue, then they resolve that, and now you don't have the illegal tying going on, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to say thanks, but no thanks to NAR.
Yeah, I don't want the risk. I don't want to take the risk.
Right.
I don't want the risk. I don't want to have to deal with professional standards. I don't want to have to deal with any of this. I just want to do my own thing.
Yeah, why would I pay somebody to yell at me? I mean, I know
Well,
Dick's Last Resort. Remember that
and
restaurant?
I'm up, well,
At Debevix,
and
yeah.
I'm up to, and it's all left up to the beliefs of the person who's accusing.
Absolutely.
It's not
Absolutely.
cut and dry.
Right.
It's
That's
very
the-
not cut and dry. And when you think about the fact that you then have a panel of 3 to 5 people who could be very diverse, you
might
could
have
have
their
somebody
own-
who's extremely religious and somebody who's extremely the opposite. And then they have to
Well, and they
determine
both think that-
it's all subjective.
But they both think that the other is hate speech, right? So if you attack me and say, hey, what I'm saying is hate speech to you, then I could say, well, you're attacking me and you're hate speeching me.
Well, again,
Right.
hate speech is different. What is it really? And it's got certain legal definitions and certain. So again, we're talking about something that's subjective. So we already know, Rachel, you and I have been playing around this code of ethics things for years and years, and we already know that the decisions that come out of arbitration panels are inconsistent.
Extremely
And
inconsistent.
it's just, right. You could take the same set of facts to 2 different arbitration panels and get different decisions.
110%.
What's going to make this different? And this is in a very emotional area. So you're going
Right.
to end up
Exactly.
pissing people off one way or the other.
Right.
Right.
This can
And
do
I think
nothing.
if you look at the case interpretation that was reviewed at NAR recently, I think that's a perfect example of that. So if you guys want, I can read through that and we can kind of talk about how this is exactly what we're talking about here.
Sure.
It's completely subjective, and what one person is going to feel is being attacked in hate speech is something that's completely irrelevant. It doesn't rise to the level of hate speech at all. So the case that NAR just reviewed at a couple months back says Realtor A leads a weekly Bible study group in the evenings. During one such study group, Realtor A led the group in a discussion of biblical passages concerning homosexuality, referencing several differing interpretations of said passages. At one point during the discussion, Realtor A stated, quote, "Some have said these verses clearly prohibit and condemn same-sex relationships," end quote. That's it. An attendee of the group found this to be inappropriate and filed an ethics complaint alleging a violation of Article 10 as interpreted by Standard of Practice 10-5 at the local Association of Realtors. So that's all that was said.
Wait, let's stop a
And
minute. Just because if this is a Bible study group and the person leading the Bible study says some people have said,
Right.
then it's about Bible study group. I would think somebody in the Bible study group would say, who said that?
Right.
There's a Bible
Right.
study group, right?
It's a Bible
And then
study group.
make
And
your
of course you're
cases
going
to-
to, well, and you're going to look at all different ways to
It has
interpret different
nothing
parts of
to
it.
But
do
instead they
with
say nothing
realtors.
and they file a complaint.
To who?
Right.
They filed a code of ethics complaint.
Right. Again,
But it's
with the
not-
local
it's-
Association of Realtors.
They're doing a Bible study. It's not like
But Realtor A, who is a member of NAR and bound by the Code of Ethics, is the one leading this Bible study group. So this is exactly our point, where does your, from a religious standpoint, where
Right.
does your personal
And
life
it's-
end, and where does it bleed over into your professional life?
And so what the complainant is saying is this person offended my values.
Yes.
That's what they're
by
saying.
simply
This
making that
person
statement.
offended my values. Give them a fair trial and hang them.
yeah.
This person
For saying-
offended my
for
values. Now, the
interpreting-
person who's
for-
saying it could very
yeah.
well say, you know what? You're telling me that I have to believe all these things. It might be true, but my faith tells me otherwise. That offends my values.
Right. That's what
So you're at an impasse.
Yeah.
And so how can this
absolutely.
our organization come down and be the definitive arbitrator on this? And so to
Right.
me, that's wrong. Now, probably somebody will file a complaint against me for hate speech.
Right.
But it's not hate speech, right? It's
right.
about these regulations and processes that end up probably creating more problems than they'll solve. And definitely the way to win an argument is not to tell somebody at the start that they're wrong. And so if you really and truly want to improve the situation in the world, you don't go around telling people they're wrong and putting them in jail because they don't think the way you do.
Right.
And
Right.
you
It's,
work,
it's an opportunity to open up a
it's
conversation.
an opportunity to open a dialogue. People don't want dialogue. There's certain
No.
people in our society
No.
don't want dialogue. They want,
But what are we trying to
My
solve?
way or the highway.
Is there what are we trying to solve? So has there been so many like fair housing violations that I don't think adding a new rule to like already rules are going to fix that problem. Like
Well,
what's
this would
the
be
problem?
code of ethics, not necessarily rules or laws. So
Yeah.
fair housing is a federal law. So
So the
this is
code of
your
ethics,
code of ethics.
are there a lot of complaints that
Yeah,
people
no.
aren't?
So here's the thing. Again, you're back to, where did this come from?
Right,
Why did this become a priority?
right,
Usually, before there's a change to something in the code of ethics, people talk about it for some period of time
right.
before it actually becomes did we believe that as NAR, that our society was, and that our people and that our culture are so degraded
Mhm.
that we need the organization to set up this subjective opportunity for people to
Right.
disagree with one another? And that's what it's done.
Have either of you guys taken the At Home with Diversity course through, I think it's through NAR?
No, I've taken other diversity courses, but not that one.
This one I did not too long ago. It was during COVID, so I did it through Zoom at home. It was very eye-opening. And if you take out the religious portion of this, so take that out and talk about the rest of it and hate speech and homosexuality and all that other stuff. If you're looking at that, going through that and listening to the stories of agents who were discriminated against. I mean, these are agents too, not necessarily just buyers, but agents, agents of color who are showing a property. The police are called on them. They show up and they
That's
arrest
happened.
them. And they're like, I'm just showing this property. Here's my Centra key on my phone. And that home had been shown by half a dozen other people or a dozen other people,
Mhm.
and the cops weren't called on them. So I think that's part of where this all comes in too, is why are you, it's not just religious situations, it's other things too. But after listening to that and listening to some stories, and there were some really heartbreaking stories in there too, I think some of that is where this came from.
Yeah, and there's many things. There's even the stories about if it's a Black homeowner, the appraisals come in. Right? So we
Yes.
have all of this.
We still
But-
have issues. Yeah.
Right. And we're going to have those and they need to be dealt with. But here's the
Right.
question. What's the best way to deal with it?
Mhm.
Is it to change an article in the code of ethics? We already know the code of ethics doesn't work in many cases.
Right.
So is this really going to do more harm than good?
Yes.
Is there a better way to approach this issue that we do have in our culture? We have many issues in our culture that need to be solved.
Right.
And
Right.
is this, and then those things you mentioned, Rachel, absolutely. And people are discriminated. And have we as a trade association stepped over the line in believing, and what it said to me based on the timing of it was that it wasn't very well thought out.
Right.
That it was more general. It was more a response to saying, look, we did something.
Yeah.
Right. So in that case, what is a better way to handle something like this? And I mean, if we want to go back to the case we were talking about, ultimately the complainant argued that the realtor statement represented his own personal beliefs about homosexuality. But the realtor then said, no, I did say, you did quote me correctly. However, I'm presenting, as a Bible study leader, I'm presenting all sides of a biblical interpretation for historical context. And I'm very careful not to put any of my own personal beliefs in there, which is why I use the word some have said. So the hearing panel in that particular case found that the realtor was not in violation. But these are kind of things that we're going to start seeing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm sitting in a panel and that's as a member of a hearing panel listening to this, I don't know that I could find this guy in violation either.
No, but then
I think we're going to see a lot of stuff like this.
He's not he's not acting as the code of ethics is for realtors during and while they're doing real estate activities.
Used to be. They just
Used to
changed
be.
it, right?
Right.
They extended it beyond that.
Right. Now the scope has gone from my behavior as a realtor and as a function of being a realtor to all the time.
Impossible.
Here's a major problem with this in my mind. It just creates more opportunity for animosity.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so subjective. Other things are pretty clear. But now what you've done is you've introduced this new concept.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so for me, for those people that think this is an overreach, I think what we should do is we should look at other professional organizations and see what they did and what they said about these new things that are taking place in our culture. And then the argument or the conversation from NAR should be, what we're doing is we're doing what the American Medical Association has done.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing what the legal profession has done. We're doing, as a matter of fact, go back, realtors, we are a profession. We put ourselves in the same categories as these other groups. And we're just doing and that would be more to me, more palatable and a better way to present this other than the board of directors pass this
Right.
and then let people
Zero
make their own stuff up.
context.
And then what'll happen in the future is people will read these decisions and they'll interpret them their own ways.
Right.
And
True.
you'll end up with even bigger morass, right? And
Right.
uncertainty.
Right. I
So
think
the best
it's
thing-
definitely it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think,
Yeah.
like
So
Rachel
that
said, the
ensues.
first case we've looked at, it looks like people examined it and they didn't find this person guilty. Now, here's what I would ask: what does the plaintiff feel like now?
Yeah.
Does the plaintiff feel like they've been put down? Do they feel like their organization failed them? Do they
Right.
feel the people on the panel are racist or whatever because they didn't find? Will that affect their
Well,
relationship?
are they a realtor also?
Well, that was my question. It doesn't make any reference in here to whether or not the complainant was also a realtor or if they
So
were.
who would
a
have
member of the public.
complained a realtor code of ethics complaint on a brand new, other
On
than
right.
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 But
By
it
process of
doesn't say.
elimination and deducing based on the information we have, I would have to think that it's more likely than not that maybe the complainant was another realtor member.
yeah, so it might have been a realtor study group. Who knows? A realtor
Right.
Bible study group.
It could have been.
Right. Could have been.
So, but now this person who feels really alienated
Right.
because now the world's against them, even their own organization.
Right.
And then for bringing the complaint, other realtors in the back of their mind, they might not say anything. That's the person, they're not supposed to know this, right? They
Right.
brought the complaint.
Right.
And so it might affect their whole business and their whole practice. And so, you get back to, where does the professional line get drawn? And I say we probably got examples that we could go look to,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we could then, that's where the discussion should take place.
So if anybody's looking for panel members, we will be on the panel to discuss this. We accept.
I don't know that I want to be on a panel to discuss this.
Right.
I think it's an interesting conversation, and I think
It's a loaded topic.
it's
It
loaded.
is. There's no win in this.
no
there really isn't.
no win, and it's a
Not
much
when- I think
bigger.
I think it's important to reference that there's no win when it comes to the religious portion of this.
Well, and
I
that's
think
the,
and I think that's the sticking point. I think when you're talking about hate speech against a homosexual person, it's much more clear. I mean, is the person a homosexual? Did you make a hate slur or a hate speech against that person? Yes or no? That's a little bit more black and white. You're not talking about religion and all the different religions that there are and all the different things people can believe, which is an endless amount of.
Yeah, did you deprive them of services?
Yeah.
Right.
Or was it just conversation?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, wow. And so this is a big issue. It's society wide, right? That people are
Mhm.
dealing with. And I just don't know that the step that, because of the timing of it, it actually offended me as a realtor.
Yeah.
It offended me that they would do something like this at this time when there's already so much divisiveness in the country.
Yeah.
And so to do that on top of it, they must have thought that this was going to help things.
Right.
Right.
So it's all probably done in the best of intention.
Usually
Right.
stuff is right.
Yeah.
Like, assume
Right.
how
And
it
I
is.
think when you look at that at Home with Diversity and the two trainers that did that, that was the whole crux of that, was this is meant to be a response to these things and how we're going to make it better. So I think the intention was good from that standpoint, but there's some things that don't quite fit in. It's the religious part of it is a square peg in a round hole, and we're trying to make that fit everything else that encompasses that.
Well, and I mean, we have to see like where, as real estate agents, like we have a duty to follow like fair housing laws and things like that. And it's like, okay, we don't want to, I mean, steering, we don't want to do that or anything like that, right? But like and then we're adding all these other layers on top of it for what? Are those enough? Like the already existing laws enough?
So, and you're talking about someone's perception.
Mhm.
Right.
of
That's
being
where the
violated.
sticking point is the
Yeah.
perception and the subjectivity of this portion of this.
There's no way that you can manage other people's perception of you, what you do, and what you say.
No.
And even if you could, it doesn't mean that you don't believe the opposite or like believe, you know what I mean? Like just because you're not saying it because you're not allowed to, it doesn't mean you don't believe it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go back to this case where the system worked the way it seems like it should have.
Right.
That to most people would say, you know, this probably doesn't look like a violation, but I guarantee you the person who made the complaint feels like they were
Like their
offended.
religion is less than,
Yeah.
or their
They feel that
feelings
they're
are less
offended,
than.
and all the people that support them,
Yeah. Which is
they're
all
going to feel the same.
terrible.
It's just going to create more divisiveness. Right?
Exactly. It's awful. Like, yeah, we don't want people to feel that way in general. And at the same time, there are rules. I don't know. It's a mess.
Well,
Oh.
and so you can even take it one step further.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, should you be required to deliver services to anybody and everybody if you're a professional? And the answer to that question nowadays seems like yes.
No.
You have to. It doesn't matter what you think of someone.
Your services have to be provided.
Your services
uniformly
have to
across the
be
board.
provided equally.
Right.
And so if you do that, you should, regardless of what you think in your head, the violation should be that you didn't perform a service for somebody.
Right.
And not that.
But I don't think you should have to perform a service for everybody.
Well, that's another question, because you could bring the religious thing back in there.
What?
And you could say that
Yeah.
some people don't believe in homosexuality or in gay. Some people don't believe it, and they believe that's, you know, now, are they bad people? Because some people say they're bad people because they don't believe it. Right. So then you got the law that says, too bad whether you believe it or not, this is the law. And so people accept that. And then the next step is you have people trying to go in and get somebody to bake them a cake.
Right.
And it's in violation of, and so they deny service.
Right.
And then, so
But
that's
then the other
the
side
denial
is-
of service. And you're saying that maybe people should, based on their faith, be able to deny service. I think that's probably yet been undecided fully in the courts. I don't know, or maybe not. Maybe.
But you
maybe
have the
no
other
longer.
side of it too, where it's like, okay, there's websites, because my business partner is a homosexual, and so he's on this website for buyers that are only looking for an agent that represents them that is also gay. And it's like, okay, but
Interesting.
I also do a good job even though I'm heterosexual.
It's not about doing a good job. I don't know. So this is a funny story. This is a funny story. So back in the early 80s, I was selling apartment buildings, and there was this old apartment building it was a house that it was old on Front Street in San Diego. And it was 13 units. And then one of the units was haunted. I mean, it was a mess, and it was never full. And so we did a 1031 exchange, and we got somebody to buy it. And my sister, who is gay, she said, you know what, this would be a perfect gay community. She says, because gay people feel like they're in danger. They feel like they're not accepted. This is in the 80s, right? They feel like they're not accepted.
Right.
You could create a community, and it was all, you know, gay people, they'd feel safer. This is a great thing. You ought to just take this and buy this building and then make it advertise that you want this to be a gay community. Right. So this is in the 80s. And so we thought, that's a good idea. We want people to feel safe. We want them to have their own community.
Yeah.
Right. So we said, okay, we'll do it. So we ran an ad, and then we got sued by
Yeah.
straight people.
Right. So they're like, we want to live there.
We got sued by straight people. Now, nothing happened. We got sued by straight people. We say we're discriminating against straight people. Well, guess what? I think you can discriminate, right, against straight people. I think
You
there's no
can discriminate based on age, because there's a plenty of 55 and over communities.
55 or better.
Yeah.
Right.
better.
But that's because of the tax bills. That's the reason that those are 55 and over. They don't pay into the schools. So when you have a community that's a 55 and older, they can do that because they're not paying into the school district. So that's the only reason those are kind of separate from everything else.
Yeah, and so when you pass these kinds of laws or rules, what happens is nothing's perfect.
No.
And
No.
then particularly look at real estate, where everybody's an independent contractor.
Right.
So pretty much everybody does their own thing anyway. And so what we've done, again, I go back to the timing of it. The timing of it was disappointing to me.
It feels like a reaction
It feels like a reaction.
instead of a well thought out,
yeah. And
decided.
it was well thought out, and they gave us the reasons, and they
reference.
told us this is what other professions do. It would have been much easier. But now we find ourselves having to defend the code of ethics, which we defend all the time.
Right.
And now this thing has placed doubt, I can tell you, in some instructors' minds about whether or not this is kind of an overreach that's going to make it more difficult to teach ethics.
Right. Oh my
to people.
God. I would not want to teach ethics.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap up. So I think, Saul, tell us a little bit more about the data advocate, because you have, what's your favorite saying, without context?
Text without context is pretext.
That's
Text
great.
without context is
And I think the data advocate allows for like a lot of the context, right?
That's
So
what we're trying to give people enough context. The real estate industry is changing dramatically. Commission compression is going to continue. Land use policy in the United States is going to continue. It's going to get lots of things are going to happen in the area of land use. We've got all these problems to solve. We've got climate change. We've got homelessness. We got all this stuff, and we have to fix it. But if we don't have enough data and information, we're liable to, number one, identify the wrong problem, and then number two, waste all our resources solving the wrong problem.
Yep, agreed.
And so we think that it's all about first understanding data and data rights.
Yeah.
So we just created a new data manifesto.
Oh.
Data, I'm going to read it to you. Consumer Data Rights Manifesto.
Okay.
Right. That's what this is, a consumer data rights manifesto. Here it is. Number one, know what you own. So just like real estate, it's a bundle of rights, and it's POITA, right? Possess, use, expose, encumber to the use of all others. You have property rights. And so just like data, you have rights.
Yeah.
And so you need to know what you own. And most people don't know what they own. And if you don't know, it's like you can't trade what you can't grade. If you don't know what you own, then you're liable to let it go for lesser value.
Right.
So you got to know what you own, and data is the new oil, and we've all got it. It's all like our greatest natural resource is now our own data, our own information. So you got to know what you own. Number two is you need this consumer data manifesto. Number two is you need to know the rights to what you own.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I know I own it. What are the rights? I need to know the rights.
Like, what am I allowed to do with it?
Yeah. What am I allowed to do with it? Then number three, I need to know the laws around these rights, privacy and data security. I need to know the rights. And then the last point, 4 points, the last point is I have to be willing to negotiate, because every day we negotiate for our rights. Every day we sit, they say, click here and we'll let you in, click here, we'll give you cookies, click here, do this. So because we don't know the value, we're constantly giving away our value. So to understand data, to be able to make informed decisions, because data is the only thing that's going to get us out of the jam that we're in as a country and as a people and as a culture and a society. It's smart use of all this data. And we're going to turn data into
smart
insight.
Is very relative.
Yeah, well, information into insight.
Yeah.
Right. To be able to make better decisions, to make more insightful decisions. But we can't make those if we don't understand the context.
Right.
And so that's what we're all about. We're trying to bring people a context by giving them
why we're doing these videos too, because Rachel, how long have you been in real estate?
This will be my 17th year.
Yeah, and I've been in it 13 years. But Saul, how long have you been in real estate?
1975.
Right, before I was born.
1975. How many years is that?
The year of my birth.
It's a long time.
That would be what, 40, yeah, 46, 47.
It's a long time, yeah. And so I think like it's good to have that context, because Rachel and I can only see it from like our perspective, and somebody who's younger, who hasn't been in as long, can only see it from their perspective. So it's good to have all these different people on. So I really appreciate it. So they go to the dataadvocate.com. Yes.
thedataadvocate.com, or you can email me anytime. I answer all my email. And so it's Saul at bettercallsaul.realtor. Saul at bettercallsaul.realtor. Or I'm on Facebook. I'm all over social media.
You're everywhere.
You're easy to find. And then Rachel, if somebody wants to talk to you or they have a referral in Chicago, what's the best way?
Best way to reach me is by cell phone at 630-542-8688 or email at rreal@dealwithreal.com.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.